Welcome to the Story of Cooking. I'm Sarah Nicholas.
This season we're filming in the heart of the Shenandoah Valley.
I'm here at the Natural Bridge in Natural Bridge, Virginia. And now we're in the kitchen. Godfrey, what you got cooking? To the berry knocker.
Berry knocker.
Welcome to the Story of Cooking. I'm Sarah Nicholas. I'm here at the Natural Bridge in Natural Bridge, Virginia. And trust me, words don't do it justice, so let's take a look. But first, we have to make our picnic. This picnic is inspired by Natural Bridge. As we'll find out later, Thomas Jefferson was the first owner of the Natural Bridge. Through a letter that his granddaughter, Cornelia Randolph, wrote to her sister, Virginia, it describes their difficult journey they had to the bridge. And of course, on a difficult journey, you would want some good food. So I've taken the letter and created a picnic based upon what they might have eaten during that period on a picnic to the Natural Bridge. So the first thing we're going to make is a quiche, a salt pork quiche. Okay, so we first pre-baked our pie shell for our quiche. One thing to talk about with this is the quiche filling actually cooks faster than the pie shell does. So it's really important when you're making a quiche to pre-bake the pie shell. And that is a process called blind baking. And when you make a pie shell from scratch, when you cook it, if you don't have something to weight down the center, it'll actually rise up and crack. So what you want to do is roll out your pie crust, put it in your pan, put parchment paper down, and pour something heavy to weight the center down, like dried beans. That's what I used. So now we're going to work on our filling. The first thing we want to do is cook our bacon salt pork in a cast iron skillet, or any skillet. Of course, the quiche, it's an egg pie, so we need eggs. We're going to have 3 eggs. Quiches are very simple. Essentially, they're eggs and cream and cheese and bacon in our instance, but you can fill them with whatever you want. Eggs, cream, and milk are the most important part of the quiche. So into our big bowl, we're going to add our heavy cream and our milk. Dump our whisked eggs in there. Our cheese, we're going to use Gruyere. It's a really sharp cheese, tastes really good with the salt pork. And for seasoning, we're going to use cayenne pepper, as little or as much as you want, and 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. Freshly grated is always better. Okay, whisk that all together. And let's check on our bacon. This can take a little while, especially if you have really fatty bacon. If you had salt pork, it would probably take longer because there's usually more fat in salt pork. So this bacon is nice and crispy. All the fat's been rendered off. We're going to add that to our mixture. Ideally, I'd probably cool the bacon down a little bit before we add it, but because it cooks the eggs, but it doesn't really matter because we have a quiche and the eggs are going to get cooked in the oven anyway, right? So I'm not going to worry about it. Do try to drain as much bacon grease off the bacon. But if some of that gets in there, that's okay too, because that's flavoring. All right, here we go. Mix it all in. Salt and pepper, very important. Okay, mix it all in and pour it into your pie crust. And you're going to pop it in a 375-degree oven, and it normally takes about half an hour, depending on your oven. Just keep an eye on it. Make sure all your bacon and cheese is evenly distributed around the quiche. I'm going to pop this in the oven, and while that's cooking, we're going to make our molasses tea cakes. Now onto the tea cakes. We're making molasses tea cakes, which are very classic, easy Southern cooking to make, and it is something that they might have carried on their picnic. Mostly because it's easy to transport, it's kind of a quick snack you can just grab, eat. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to mix our wet ingredients together. We have 2 eggs. that's not good. Got some shell in there. So whisk your 2 eggs together. And you're gonna have 1 stick of butter. You want it softened because you're gonna mix it all together. It's easier to mix softened butter. And then you're gonna add your sugar, white sugar. 1 tablespoon of ginger. And the most important ingredient is your molasses. Let's make this easier on myself here. Get this out of the way. Okay. And the molasses goes in. It sticks. Gotta use a little elbow grease. Okay. Get as much as you can, because that is really the flavoring agent of your cookies. All right. And it's very sticky, so try not to get it on yourself. Might be a while before you can get it off. All right, so mix that all together. And that's gonna go into our flour. I should have used a bigger bowl for this. Okay. Spoon all of that out of there and mix it with your flour. All-purpose, no, self-rising flour, excuse me. And this is going to go in a 350-degree oven for about 8 minutes, so it's cooks very fast. All right, just keep on stirring until everything's incorporated. It gets kind of hard to stir after stuff starts getting mixed together, so you know what? I'm going to use my favorite tools, which are my hands. It's messy. You want it to be not very runny at all. It's a very thick dough. All right, these look well incorporated. I'm gonna clean off my hands a little bit, make it easier to make these cookies. Or as best I can. Good enough. Okay. I'm gonna make them into little balls. Just roll them in your hands, like so. And just plop them on your cookie sheet. I like to line my cookie sheet with parchment paper because it just makes it easier. It doesn't stick. I'm gonna keep rolling these cookies out. They go in a 350-degree oven for about 8 minutes. The quiche should be done by that time as well. And then I'm gonna pack up and I'll see you at Natural Bridge. I'm here with Dean Ferguson, who is the Director of Interpretive Programs for Natural Bridge, and local girl, my mom, Dell Taylor,
who is excited to share the Natural Bridge.
Dean, can you tell us the story of the Monacan Indians and the creation of Natural Bridge?
Sure. The Monacan Indian people tell a story which goes back hundreds and hundreds of years of when they first arrived into the area. And according to their traditions, they were being pursued by another group of Indian people, and they were backed into a chasm, and as they recognized that there's no way to get across the chasm, the Monacan people then understood their fate, and they began to gather the women and children in a circle, and they began to dance and to sing and beseech the Creator, ask for some way to cross this bridge or get them out of this precarious situation. And so the other warriors who were pursuing them were observing all of this, and as these events began to transpire, according to the Monacan story, the sun hit its face and it became very dark, and there was an eruption in the chasm. It threw up smoke and stone, and when the smoke cleared away, there was the bridge.
The bridge was revealed. It's truly spectacular. Let's take a walk.
And this is what the Monacan people would have seen.
Wow. I mean, that's truly remarkable. It's breathtaking. So, give me the more scientific explanation of how this bridge was formed.
Sure. Well, the natural bridge is ancient. It is a natural rock formation which was constructed by the forces of nature, which go back a very long time ago. We're literally talking 500 million years ago with the birth of our
Beginning
planet.
of the planet, yeah.
Indeed. You have this ocean draining off, exposing the land mass, and of course it's going to lay down the ultimately what will be the limestone, which is what much of the region is constructed upon. And as the tectonics begin to shove west, and the land masses begin to back up, and then the term folding and vaulting occurs, where everything just rolls back, which of course is going to create this underground cavern system, underground water, which is what we call a karst system. And with the formation of the caverns, we have to then understand that right now, if we were to step back into time, we'd be buried inside of a mountain.
Right.
And
So,
one of the,
Time is.
indeed.
What is the time
Oh,
period?
well, let's see, roughly somewhere between 300 million, 500 million years ago.
how tall is the bridge?
The natural bridge is 215 feet tall.
And how the span is what, 90 feet?
90 foot from span to span. It's 100 feet wide, 60 feet long, and 42 and a half feet thick.
That's
Which it's hard to share that in photographs.
Right.
absolutely,
Right.
yeah.
But
I
we're
think it-
standing here, so
No,
you
you're
can
right.
Because
see.
everybody, I mean, a lot of people have seen it in photographs, and you cannot do the bridge justice unless you come here and stand underneath it.
No, it is an experience. It's something. It is the ultimate experience for anyone who desires nature.
And Thomas Jefferson, I remember he had something great to say about it.
Yeah, Mr. Jefferson wrote that in regard to the natural bridge, it was the most sublime of nature's creations.
Absolutely.
A lot of people have written about the bridge, right?
Well, I think Herman Melville in
Right.
Moby Dick.
Moby Dick.
He
Oh, really?
described the whale going through the water as the wonderful natural bridge. I've forgotten the words, but it has inspired a good many people through the years.
Yeah, absolutely.
When Thomas Jefferson first visited the natural bridge in 1767, this was Augusta County. It then became Botetourt County, and then finally in 1777, it became Rockbridge County.
Oh, I've never made that connection before.
It's because of our wonderful natural bridge.
Yeah,
Now you're truly inspired.
it makes total sense. Are you guys getting hungry? Get out of the cold a
I am
little
ready
bit?
to go eat and get out of the
Absolutely.
cold.
Okay.
I like a fire.
I prepared a picnic that we can enjoy by the bridge. It is so nice to be by this warm fire. I have the picnic all ready. You guys want to see what I got?
I don't know, but I love that basket.
Well, let me tell you the story of why I have this basket. It makes sense. I packed a picnic based on a letter that Thomas Jefferson's granddaughter wrote about her trip with her grandpa to the natural bridge. So everything in the basket is inspired by what was written in that letter. And we'll talk more about that when we get back to the kitchen. But for now, let's talk a little bit more about the bridge and enjoy some food. So before Thomas Jefferson, there's a story about George Washington. You want to share that with us?
Sure. According to legend, in 1750, young George Washington conducted the first survey of the natural bridge. The only evidence of that is a marking on the south side of the bridge, 23 and a half feet above Cedar Creek, etched into a rectangle are the initials GW. Otherwise, there is absolutely no textual context for it whatsoever. Truth is that yes, George Washington was here, but simply not as a surveyor.
Oh, okay.
Isn't there a legend that they found a piece of a surveying equipment, though? Or where he dropped the,
The
whatever it's called, the Plumb Bob?
Right.
Right.
Well, underneath the natural bridge, where the vertical control point is located, is the constant to where the Plumb Bob would have been dropped. There is etched in the stone there as well a very, very kind of erratic GW into that as well. There were some other stories of some surveyor points and rocks on the property as well. However, I can't substantiate any of that, quite frankly. As I say, George Washington was here in the region. In 1755, he was given a directive from Governor Dinwiddie to see that a series of frontier forts were established along the Great Road. And as a young militia officer, Washington oversaw the construction of all of those forts. So consequently, was he here? Yes, he was here. Did he survey the natural bridge? Probably not.
And in the rocks, so on the bridge, there's, you said his initials, and you can still see that today.
Yes, ma'am, you sure can. The initials are still there. Whoever, you know, some scholars contend that those initials appeared after Mr. Jefferson's death. It could be an attempt to sell the property after Mr. Jefferson's death. It's just...
That would increase the value.
Oh, absolutely. You figure it like this. If you go back to put it in historical context, you're not going to find a better pair of vases than George Washington and Thomas Jefferson.
Tell us about the first owner. That's where the story really begins.
Right. Well, let's go from right at the beginning.
King George. Do I have it right?
Well, it's interesting.
King George of England.
Kind of.
King George of England
Okay,
and
remember,
everything.
this is the imperial colony of Virginia.
Right.
This is England. So technically, everything belongs to the king. Well, here's the fly in the ointment. In terms of the survey, there does not appear to have been a survey. So let me expand on that just a little bit. Okay, Thomas Jefferson first visited the property in 1767, and he then returned in 1774, sent a letter to the last royal governor of the colony of Virginia, Lord Dunmore, and he wanted to buy the natural bridge.
And what did he pay for it?
Well, according
That's
to
a good question.
Mr. Jefferson's documents, he paid £1 or 20 shillings for the property.
Which in today's terms is a couple of dollars?
It'd have been about $3 or $4.
Okay.
But here's another
Wow.
interesting little thing about the survey business. Evidently, Mr. Jefferson had to have a survey conducted of the property before he purchased it. And some documents indicate that it was a fellow from Williamsburg named James Trimble, a surveyor who actually conducted that survey of the property. So in 1774, on the 5th of July, the deed was signed by Lord Dunmore, and Thomas Jefferson became the first American owner of the natural bridge.
natural bridge.
And then he owned the property from 1774 until the day he passed away on the 4th of July in the year 1826.
And so the bridge has always been privately owned.
That's
So,
correct.
you know, I always think Thomas Jefferson, he built a little cabin here.
That's right.
To entertain his people when they were coming through and share the bridge with him. So, in my mind, this is the original tourist attraction.
Well, it really is. You know, Mr. Jefferson, he made, rather wrote a lot of letters, as everybody knows, and he wrote a lot of letters about the natural bridge, and he sent a lot of these letters to France. A lot of these letters went to Europe, to various individuals. Whenever he had an overflow of guests at Monticello, he would be advising everyone, oh, you really should take the carriage trip into the valley to see my natural bridge. And this was really some of the earliest marketing, and Thomas Jefferson was marketing the natural bridge. He saw this bridge as something very, very unique. And
How long did it take them to get here from Charlottesville?
from Charlottesville, depending
by
upon the
wagon.
weather,
Yeah.
it could be upwards of 3 days to a week, just depending.
Yeah, and the letter that I based this picnic on actually talks about how difficult the journey would have been.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You can imagine the roads.
Yeah, or lack thereof.
They were just,
Yes, that's more accurate.
what we call a road was hardly.
Yeah. Well, I've made you talk, so now you're gonna eat.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, we have salt pork quiche. Now this is inspired by, you know, it would have been something similar to maybe what they would have eaten. And we also have molasses tea cakes. So
And
enjoy.
everything travels easily in a rockety wagon that's getting bogged down
Exactly.
by mud and everything.
Yeah, everything travels
This is
well.
delicious, Sarah.
Thank you.
Oh, man.
And we have water, but maybe Thomas Jefferson would have brought tea, especially on a cold day like this, or
Wine.
some wine. Thomas Jefferson, yeah, he actually has a vineyard at Monticello, so maybe he would have brought some wine. So
Mr. Jefferson loved his wine.
he did, as do I, and most
As
Virginians.
do we all. And he loved not just French wine, but he tried to grow it
Mm-hmm.
and make his own wine in Virginia.
So Dean, can you tell us any more Monacan Indian stories? Because I think that's a really cool part about this natural bridge.
Well, in terms of stories, what I like to expand upon when talking to folks is simply that Monacan people have been in this region for thousands of years. Indian people have lived in this region of Natural Bridge in Shenandoah Valley for over 13,000 years.
Right.
The unfortunate aspect about that is that due to the destruction of the culture, many of the Monacan people, even today, like many Indian people, have had so much of their culture destroyed that a lot of the stories have disappeared over the years.
And most of it is just passed down by oral tradition.
That's right.
And I hope they're.
Well, it is, and my wife is a Monacan Indian, and she is one of the elders of the tribe, and
wow.
she has a vast repository, if you will, of stories that relate to her family.
And she's writing them down, I know, because I've read some of what
Right.
Vicki writes.
Oh yeah.
The stories are just wonderful.
Yeah, and you guys are doing a great job here at Natural Bridge preserving the stories of the Monacan Indians. You have the Monacan Village here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the Monacan Village has been a mainstay of the Natural Bridge experience now for 15 years. And originally, the Monacan exhibit was constructed by myself and my wife, Victoria, Chief Kenneth Branham of the Monacan Indian Nation, as well as a number of other Monacan Indian people who were involved with us at the time a number of years ago. The whole construction or reconstruction was based upon the archaeology of our general area to give a more precise understanding of how people used the land and how the Monacan people used the natural resources that were such an abundance in the Piedmont and the Blue Ridge and the Ridge and Valley portion of what's today Virginia, which incidentally the Monacan Indian people called Amonishuck. They never called it Virginia. It was known as Amonishuck. Yeah, it's just like the Natural Bridge. You know, our white ancestors who settled the region, they called it the Rock Bridge or the Natural Bridge, but the Indian people, the Monacan people, called it Mahominy. And you know, I said earlier, we don't really know what it means, but some of the Indian people of the area suggested it means gathering place of the Great Spirit, which would resonate
Yeah, absolutely.
indeed.
It's a great place to gather.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've enjoyed gathering here today for sure, even despite the cold. It's been great. Thank you so much, Dean, and of course, thank you so much, Mom. It's been great despite the cold. This has been The Story of Cooking. I'm Sarah Nicholas. Until next time, keep the story going.